The stars above Earth burned with fire that was not their own. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the defense station, watching the enemy fleet appear like dark clouds across the moon. He had spent 40 years in the military, but he had never seen anything like this. 17 different alien species, all united under one banner, all coming for Earth. "Sir, they're demanding our surrender again," said Commander Lisa Hayes from her station. Her voice was calm, but her hand shook slightly as she read the message. "They want us to give up all our weapons and join their collective as a worker species." Jake shook his head. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. "Send them our response. Tell them we want peace, but we won't be slaves. Tell them we can negotiate a fair partnership." Lisa sent the message. They waited. The alien response came quickly, and it was not words. It was fire from the sky. The first strikes hit military bases across the planet. Jake watched the screens as bright flashes appeared in China, Russia, America, and Europe. Missiles that moved faster than anything humans had ever built. The defense systems tried to stop them, but they were too slow, too old, too human. "Get me a channel to all our forces," Jake said. His voice was steady even though his heart was breaking. "Tell them to evacuate civilians first. Tell them to avoid firing on civilian areas. Tell them we fight with honor." A younger officer looked at him with confusion. "Sir, they just killed thousands of our people. Why are we still following the old rules?" Jake turned to look at the young man. "Because if we stop following the rules, we stop being human. We stop being worth saving." The war lasted 6 months. 6 terrible months of fire and blood and ash. The aliens called themselves the Kethrin Collective. They had technology that was hundreds of years ahead of Earth. Their ships could appear and disappear. Their weapons could destroy entire cities in seconds. Their soldiers wore armor that human bullets could barely scratch. But humans fought anyway. They fought in the cities and in the mountains. They fought in the deserts and in the frozen north. And even as they fought, they tried to protect their own people and the alien prisoners they captured. Amy Carter was a doctor in Chicago when the war came to her city. She was a small woman with brown hair and gentle hands that had saved hundreds of lives. When the Kethrin soldiers marched into her hospital, she was treating a wounded human soldier and a wounded Kethrin soldier side by side. "Why do you help the enemy?" asked the Kethrin commander who found her. His name was Kralmet, and he spoke human language with a strange clicking sound. "Your people are dying, but you waste medicine on my soldier." Amy looked up at him. "Because he's hurt. Because he's a living being. Because that's what we do," Kralmet laughed. It was a cold sound like breaking ice. "Your species is weak. You will not survive because you care too much about those who want to kill you." The war turned darker as the months passed. The Kethrins learned that humans would not fire on their own civilians, so the Kethrins started using human prisoners as shields. They would march them in front of their soldiers. They would place them around their bases. They would broadcast their faces so human soldiers could see them. Jake Morrison made the hardest decision of his life every single day. Hold fire and let the enemy advance, or fire and kill his own people. Most days he held fire. Most days the enemy advanced. Commander Lisa Hayes kept broadcasting messages to the Kethrin fleet. "We can have peace," she said over and over. "We can share our world. We can learn from each other. Please stop the killing. Please, let's talk." The Kethrins never answered with words. They answered with more attacks. In the underground bunkers, human leaders met to discuss their options. They had nuclear weapons, biological weapons, chemical weapons. They had things that could kill millions. But they also had laws, old laws from wars long past, laws that said some weapons should never be used. "We could end this," said one general, a man named Peter Walsh. "We have weapons that could destroy their home planets. We could threaten them and kill billions of innocent aliens who never voted for this war?" Jake asked. "No, we find another way. There is no other way," Peter shouted. "They're killing us. They're taking our children. When do we stop playing by rules that only we follow?" Jake stood up. His face was hard. "When we become them, and I'm not ready for that yet." "Are you?" The room went silent. The final battle happened in Geneva, where the old United Nations building still stood. It had become the last stronghold of human resistance. 50,000 soldiers held that city against 500,000 Kethrin troops. They had food for 3 weeks. They had ammunition for 2. The Kethrins surrounded the city and sent one final message. "Surrender or watch us kill every civilian in Geneva, one by one on live broadcast to the world." Jake Morrison stood in the command center with Lisa Hayes and Amy Carter, who had been evacuated there when Chicago fell. Around them were the last leaders of free humanity. They all looked at him, waiting for his decision. "We have one missile left that could reach their command ship," said an officer. "If we fire it now, we might kill their High Council, and they would retaliate by destroying every human city left standing," Lisa said quietly. "They've told us as much." Amy spoke for the first time in hours. "How many civilians are in Geneva?" 200,000, Jake answered. "Men, women, children, families. And if we surrender?" "They live. As slaves, but they live." The room was silent for a long moment. Outside, they could hear the distant sound of Kethran weapons charging up. The aliens were serious. They would start killing civilians in 1 hour. Jake looked around at all the faces. These were good people, brave people, people who had fought for 6 months against impossible odds, people who had never given up hope that humanity would find a way. "Send the surrender," Jake said. His voice broke on the last word. "Sir." Someone started to protest. "Send it," Jake shouted. Then quieter. "I won't let them murder civilians while I still have a choice. Send the surrender." Lisa Hayes typed the message with tears running down her face. Her hands moved slowly over the keyboard, like she was hoping someone would stop her. No one did. The message went out to the Kethran flagship. 3 words: "We surrender unconditionally." The Kethran response came quickly. Their leader, High Arbiter Zekthul, appeared on every screen in Geneva. He was tall for his species, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes were yellow and cold. "Humans of Earth," he said in perfect English. "Your surrender is accepted. You will lay down all weapons immediately. You will report to processing centers for assignment to work details. You will obey all Kethran orders without question. Any resistance will result in immediate execution. Your civilization is now ended. Your independence is now ended. Your freedom is now ended." He paused, and something like a smile crossed his alien face. "Your mercy and your compassion have made you weak. They have destroyed you. Let this be a lesson to all species in the galaxy. Kindness is a disease that kills those who carry it." Jake Morrison watched the broadcast and felt something inside him grow cold. He looked at Amy, who stood with her arms wrapped around herself. He looked at Lisa, who was still crying quietly. "Record this," Jake said suddenly. "Record everything he just said. Store it in every hidden databank we have. Bury it deep where they won't find it." "Why?" asked Lisa. Jake's eyes were hard. "Because someday someone might need to remember what they said. Someone might need to remember what they did to us. And someone might need to remember that we tried to do this the right way." The Kethran soldiers entered Geneva that night. They marched through streets where human soldiers stood with their hands up, weapons on the ground. They marched past children who clutched their parents and cried. They marched past Amy Carter's hospital, where she stood in the doorway watching them come. One Kethran soldier stopped in front of her. "You, doctor, you are the one who treated our wounded soldier months ago." Amy nodded slowly. "That was foolish," the soldier said. "Weakness. Your mercy means nothing to us." "I know," Amy said quietly. "I'm beginning to understand that." The soldier moved on. Amy watched him go, and somewhere deep inside her, something began to change. Something began to die. It was a small death, quiet and private, but it was important. All across Earth, similar small deaths were happening. In 1,000 cities and 1,000,000 homes, humans were learning a terrible lesson. They were learning that kindness without strength is just another word for victim. They were learning that mercy without power is just another way to die. They were learning, slowly and painfully, that sometimes the rules that make you good are the same rules that get you killed. And they were starting to wonder if being good was worth it anymore. Jake Morrison stood in the command center as Kethran soldiers came to arrest him. He did not resist. He let them put chains on his hands. He let them lead him away. But before he left, he looked back at Lisa Hayes. "Keep broadcasting," he told her. "Keep sending messages. Let them think we're still hoping for mercy." "Are we?" Lisa asked. Jake's smile was cold. "No, but let them think so. It will make them careless." As they took him away, Jake Morrison looked up at the stars through the broken roof of the command center. Those stars had watched humanity grow from cave dwellers to space travelers. They had watched humans learn to be kind, to be merciful, to be compassionate. 3 years passed like a slow disease. Earth was no longer home. It was a prison with no walls. a grave for people who were still breathing. The Kethrin Collective ruled from the old United Nations building in New York. They called it the Spire of Dominion now. From there, High Arbiter Zekthul and his council sent out orders to the 17 alien species that now occupied every continent. Humans were not citizens anymore. They were not even prisoners of war. They were simply resources like oil or coal or iron. Amy Carter worked in the ruins of Chicago. The hospital where she had once saved lives was now a Kethrin processing center, where humans were assigned to work details. But Amy still practiced medicine. She did it in secret, in the burned-out basement of an old school where the Kethrins never looked. Every night, humans would come to her with injuries from the work camps, broken bones from the mines, burns from the factories, infections from the crowded living centers where 50 people shared rooms meant for 5. Amy treated them all with whatever supplies she could steal or trade for. She worked by candlelight and always kept her medical tools hidden in a bag she could grab and run with. "Thank you, doctor," said an old man whose arm she had just set. "You're saving lives." "I'm just delaying deaths," Amy said quietly. Her hands moved with practice as she wrapped his arm. "But it's all I can do." The old man looked at her with sad eyes. "Do you think anyone is coming to save us?" Amy did not answer. She had stopped believing in rescue 2 years ago. Across the city in the sewers beneath the broken streets, Ryan Blake was teaching children how to read. He had been a teacher before the war, a man who loved books and learning and the sound of young voices asking questions. Now he taught in the dark, in the smell of waste and rot, because the Kethrins had made it illegal for humans to learn. "Knowledge is dangerous," the Kethrins had announced. "Humans will be happier as workers. They do not need education." So Ryan taught in secret. He had 12 students tonight, ranging from 6 years old to 16. They sat on broken concrete and held books that Ryan had saved from burning libraries. The books were falling apart, but the words still worked. "Can you tell me what this word is?" Ryan asked a young girl named Sophie. She was 8 years old and had lost her parents in the first month of occupation. "Freedom," Sophie read slowly. "Freedom. Good. And do you know what it means?" Sophie thought for a moment. "Is it like in the old stories, when people could go wherever they wanted?" "Yes," Ryan said softly. "That's exactly what it means." "Will we ever have it again?" asked another child, a boy named Danny. Ryan looked at all their faces in the dim light. They were dirty and thin. They had grown up in a world of chains, even if they could not see the chains. But their eyes were bright. They were still curious. They still wanted to learn. "I don't know," Ryan said honestly. "But I know that as long as we remember what freedom is, as long as we can read that word and understand it, then it's not completely gone." Above the sewers, in the streets where Kethrin soldiers patrolled, Megan Torres walked carefully with her head down. She was a young woman, only 25, but she looked 40. The occupation had aged everyone. She carried a small bag of food that she had earned by cleaning Kethrin buildings for 12 hours. The bag held enough food for 2 days if she was careful, but Megan was not thinking about food. She was thinking about her daughter, Emma. The Kethrins had taken Emma 2 years ago when she was only 4 years old. They had come to Megan's assigned living center and simply taken the child from her arms. "She will be raised properly," the Kethrin officer had said. "She will learn to serve. She will forget you." Megan had screamed and fought, but they had hit her until she stopped. Then they had left with Emma, and Megan had not seen her daughter since. Every day Megan thought about Emma. Every night she cried quietly so her roommates would not hear. And every moment in between she planned. She planned how she would find her daughter. She planned how she would make the Kethrins pay. She planned in a way she never would have before the occupation, in a way that involved blood and pain and things that would have made her sick 3 years ago. But 3 years changes people. 3 years of slavery changes them even more. At the Spire of Dominion, High Arbiter Zekthul held a meeting with his council. They sat in a large room that had once been the General Assembly Hall, where humans had tried to solve their problems with words and votes. Now it was decorated with Kethrin banners and the flags of 17 alien species. There were no human flags. Humans were not allowed to have flags. "The occupation proceeds well," said one council member, a female Kethrin named Velsina. "Production is up. Resistance is minimal. The humans have accepted their place." "Excellent," Zekthul said. His yellow eyes glowed with satisfaction. And what of the human leaders? The admiral and the commander? Jake Morrison works in the mines in Colorado, another council member reported. He breaks rocks 12 hours a day. He has caused no trouble. And Commander Lisa Hayes? She cleans floors in this very building. We see her every day. She keeps her head down and obeys all orders. Zechthel laughed, that cold sound like breaking ice. How the mighty fall. These were the leaders of Earth, and now they scrub our floors and break our rocks. It is fitting. There are rumors of secret gatherings, Velsina said carefully. Humans meeting in small groups. Underground teaching. Hidden medical care. Zechthel waved one of his forehands dismissively. Let them have their small rebellions. It keeps them feeling like they have some control. As long as they work and obey, they can whisper in the dark all they want. Some of my officers think we should crush even these small resistances, Velsina said. Why? Zechthel asked. The humans are broken. Look at them. They fight with words in secret schools while we control their entire planet. They are not dangerous. They are pathetic. Their compassion made them weak, and their weakness made them slaves. There is no threat here. There is only a lesson for the galaxy to learn. The council agreed. They moved on to other business, discussing mining quotas and factory production and how many humans should be assigned to which tasks. They talked about humans the way humans once talked about machines or animals, with cold efficiency and no emotion at all. They did not know that Lisa Hayes, who cleaned their floors, listened carefully to every word they said. They did not know that she had a perfect memory and wrote down everything she heard in code on scraps of paper that she hid in her shoes. They did not know that she passed these scraps to other humans who worked in the building, who passed them to runners, who carried the information across the city and across the world. They did not know that Jake Morrison, who broke rocks in Colorado, was doing more than just breaking rocks. Every day he whispered to the humans who worked beside him. He reminded them of their training. He taught them to be patient. He told them that defeat was not the same as surrender, and surrender was not the same as giving up. They did not know that Amy Carter, treating patients in the dark, was learning Kethran biology from the bodies of dead Kethran soldiers that were sometimes dumped in human areas. She was learning where they were vulnerable. She was learning how to hurt them. They did not know that Ryan Blake was not just teaching children to read. He was teaching them mathematics and science and engineering. He was teaching them everything they would need to build, to fix, to create. He was preparing them for a future the Kethrans could not imagine. They did not know that Megan Torres had found other parents whose children had been taken. They met in secret, 20 of them, and they planned. They drew maps of the facilities where the children were kept. They studied the schedules of the guards. They prepared. The Kethrans did not know any of this because they believed humans were broken. They believed compassion had made humans weak. They believed that a species that would not fire on its own civilians to win a war was a species that would never be dangerous again. They were wrong. On the third anniversary of the occupation, the Kethrans held a celebration. They forced human workers to attend and watch as High Arbiter Zechthel gave a speech from the steps of the Spire of Dominion. 3 years ago we conquered this planet, he announced. His voice boomed through speakers across the city. We conquered it because humans were weak. They cared too much about mercy. They cared too much about rules. They cared too much about the lives of their enemies. He gestured to the human crowd below, thousands of them, thin and dirty and tired, forced to stand and listen. Your old leaders spoke of compassion and kindness. They spoke of treating prisoners with respect. They spoke of protecting civilians even in war. These were lies that destroyed you. These were weaknesses that made you slaves. Zechthel's eyes swept across the humans. Do you understand now? Do you see how your mercy killed you? Do you see how your compassion was your downfall? The humans stood silent. They had learned not to speak at these gatherings. They had learned not to show emotion. They kept their faces blank and their eyes down. But inside, in the secret places where thoughts live, something was growing. Something dark and cold and patient. Something that listened to every word Zechthel said and remembered it all. In the crowd, Amy Carter stood next to Ryan Blake and Megan Torres. They had found each other over the years, 3 strangers brought. 5 years after the conquest, Amy Carter was brought before the Kethran Council in chains. She walked slowly through the halls of the Spire of Dominion, flanked by 2 guards. Her steps echoed on the marble floor that human workers polished every day. She had polished this floor herself once, months ago, on her hands and knees while Catherine overseers watched and laughed. Now she walked upright. Her chains made soft clicking sounds with each step. The guards led her into the council chamber. It was a vast room with high ceilings and windows that looked out over the ruins of New York. 17 different species sat in a circle, each representing one member race of the Catherine Collective. At the center, elevated above the rest, sat High Arbiter Zekthul. "Amy Carter," Zekthul said. His voice was formal, like he was reading from a script. "You have been accused of illegal medical practice, unauthorized gathering of humans, theft of Catherine medical supplies, and teaching prohibited skills to human workers. How do you plead?" Amy said nothing. She stood in the center of the circle and looked at each council member in turn. Her face showed no fear, no anger, no emotion at all. "She does not speak," observed Velsina, the female Catherine council member. "Perhaps she does not understand the charges." "Oh, she understands," said Kralmet, the overseer who had found Amy in her hospital 5 years ago. "I remember this one. She is the doctor who wasted medicine on our wounded. She believes in mercy." He said the last word like it was a curse. Zekthul leaned forward. "Dr. Carter, you have been caught operating an illegal medical facility. You treated humans who should have been allowed to die, thus reducing the surplus population. You stole supplies that belonged to the collective. You gathered humans in groups larger than permitted. These are serious crimes." Amy still said nothing. Her eyes moved to the windows, looking at the city beyond. Smoke rose from the factories where humans worked 18-hour shifts. In the distance, she could see the labor camps where children as young as 8 broke rocks and sorted metal. "Do you have nothing to say in your defense?" Zekthul asked. He sounded almost amused. "No plea for mercy? No claim that you were only helping your people?" Amy's eyes came back to him. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was a small smile, soft and sad. "You conquered Earth?" she whispered. The council chamber went silent. Some of the council members leaned forward, not sure they had heard correctly. "What did you say?" Zekthul asked. Amy's voice was still quiet, still soft. "You conquered Earth? Is that what you think you did?" Kralmet laughed. "Has she gone mad? We are sitting in your planet's capital. Your people work in our mines, your children serve in our homes. How is this not conquest?" Amy turned to look at him. Her smile did not change. "Earth had rules, laws about war, laws about prisoners, laws about civilians. We followed those laws even when we were losing, even when following them meant we would lose." "Yes," Zekthul said. "Those laws were your weakness. That is why we won." "No," Amy said softly. "Those laws were not our weakness. They were yours." The council members looked at each other, confused. Velsina spoke up. "Explain yourself, human." Amy took a slow breath. "We fought you with one hand, tied behind our backs. We did not use our worst weapons because we believed you were people who could be reasoned with. We believed you deserved compassion. We believed there were lines that should never be crossed, even in war." She looked around the circle again, meeting each pair of eyes. "We were wrong. You are not people. You are monsters who understand only strength, and the rules we followed, the mercy we showed, the compassion we offered, those were not for us. Those were for you. They were protecting you from what we really are." Zekthul's amusement faded. "What nonsense is this?" "You didn't conquer Earth," Amy continued. Her voice was still quiet, but now there was something sharp underneath it, like a blade hidden in silk. "You conquered our conscience. You killed our compassion. You murdered our mercy. And now those things are dead." She paused. The council chamber was absolutely silent. "You wanted to see humanity without kindness?" Amy whispered. "You wanted to see what we were like when we stopped caring about rules? When we stopped worrying about prisoners and civilians and lines that should not be crossed?" Her smile widened, and for the first time, the council members saw that it did not reach her eyes. Her eyes were cold and empty. "You're about to find out." Zekthul stood up. Is this a threat? Are you threatening this council? No, Amy said. I'm thanking you. You taught us a valuable lesson. You taught us that mercy is weakness, that compassion is failure, that rules are for the conquered. We spent 5 years learning to think like you. We studied your philosophy. We absorbed your values. We became what you are. She looked directly at Zekthul. So thank you, High Arbiter. Thank you for killing the part of us that would have let you live. Kralmet laughed nervously. The ravings of a broken mind. Take her away. But none of the guards moved. They were looking at Amy with something that might have been fear. Velsina noticed it too. Guards, remove the prisoner. The guard stepped forward, but slowly. Too slowly, as if they were not sure they wanted to touch her. Amy raised her chained hands. Do you know what these chains are made of? Kethrin steel. Do you know who manufactures them? Humans. Do you know who maintains your weapons? Humans. Do you know who built this building you sit in? Humans. Do you know who cleans your ships and serves your food and repairs your technology? Humans. She let that sink in for a moment. We are everywhere. We are in every system. We have been here for 5 years, watching and learning and preparing. You thought we were broken. You thought slavery had destroyed our spirit. You were wrong. It just taught us to hide. Zekthul pressed a button on his chair. Security, seal the building. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. Still nothing. Your security systems are offline, Amy said calmly. They went offline about 3 minutes ago. So did your communications array. So did your defense grid. So did the automatic systems on all 17 of your command ships in orbit. The council members stood up now, alarmed. Velsina pulled out a communication device and tried to call for help. Her device was dead. How? Zekthul started. We've been inside your systems for 4 years, Amy said. Every human worker you thought was stupid and defeated was actually an engineer or a programmer or a soldier. We built your computers. We maintained your networks. We had access to everything and you never noticed because you thought we were too broken to be dangerous. She took a step forward. Her chains clinked. Do you know what else we learned from you? We learned that compassion is foolish. We learned that mercy is weakness. We learned that enemies should not be given second chances or prisoner rights or humanitarian treatment. Another step. So we won't. Alarms began to sound throughout the building. Not Kethrin alarms. Those were offline. These were new alarms, human alarms, playing on speakers that had been hidden and installed over 5 years by workers who were never watched carefully because they were just humans, just slaves, just defeated. On every screen in the council chamber, a new image appeared. It showed the night sky above Earth, and in that sky, lights were appearing. Hundreds of them, thousands of them. Ships dropping out of stealth mode. Human ships. Impossible, Zekthul breathed. You had no ships. We destroyed your fleet. You destroyed the fleet we let you see, Amy said. The other fleet, the real one, we built in secret. In asteroids and hidden moons and dead stations you never bothered to check. We built it slowly over 5 years while you thought we were mining resources for you. We were mining resources for us. The screens changed. Now they showed images from across the 17 Kethrin homeworlds. Images of Kethrin cities. Kethrin civilians going about their daily lives. Kethrin children in schools. Kethrin families in homes. And in each image, in the background, almost invisible, there was a human. A servant, a maintenance worker, a slave. We're not just on Earth, Amy said. We're everywhere you are, every world you rule, every station you control, every ship you fly. Your servants are our soldiers. Your slaves are our spies. Your workers are our weapons. And tonight they all received the same signal. She looked at Zekthul with those cold, empty eyes. 2 words. No mercy. The council chamber doors burst open, but it was not Kethrin's security coming through. It was humans, armed humans. Humans in armor that they had built in secret. Humans with weapons they had stolen and hidden and improved over 5 years of patient planning. At the front was Jake Morrison. He was no longer the broken miner from Colorado. He wore the uniform of an admiral again, but it was different now. Darker. No medals, no symbols of honor, just function, just efficiency. Behind him were Lisa Hayes and Ryan Blake and Megan Torres and 100 other humans who had spent 5 years pretending to be defeated while they planned this moment. Jake looked at Zekthul. High Arbiter, you are now a prisoner of war. The Kethrin Collective has fallen. Your fleets are disabled. Your governments are in chaos. Your people are at our mercy. He paused, and his smile was as cold as Amy's. Except mercy is an extinct human word. You taught us that. Zekthul staggered back. No, this cannot be. Humans are weak, compassionate. You follow rules. We did, Jake said. Past tense. On the screens behind him, the images changed again. Now they showed. The signal went out across 17 worlds at exactly the same moment. 2 words on every hidden transmitter, every secret frequency, every coded message that humans had been whispering for 5 years. No mercy. On the Kethrin homeworld of Kethral, in the Grand Palace where the planetary governor lived, a human servant named Kevin Park was bringing the evening meal. He had worked in the palace for 4 years. Every day he had bowed and smiled and acted grateful for the opportunity to serve. Every night he had memorized layouts and security codes and guard rotations. Tonight, the meal tray carried more than food. The governor, a fat Kethrin named Belmore, was laughing with his family when Kevin entered. They were watching a broadcast from Earth, enjoying images of human suffering in the work camps. It was entertainment for them. More wine, Belmore ordered without looking at Kevin. Of course, sir, Kevin said. He poured the wine with steady hands. Then he put down the bottle and picked up the weapon hidden beneath the tray. The laughter stopped. In the servant quarters, 50 other humans who had been pretending to be domestic workers for years were already moving. They had weapons now, pulled from hidden caches. They had communications gear that let them coordinate with human cells across the planet. They had explosives that they had made from cleaning supplies and fertilizer over years of patient work. They were not slaves anymore. They had never really been slaves. They had been soldiers in deep cover, and now the cover was blown. The planetary defense grid went offline first. The Kethrins had never questioned why they needed humans to maintain it. Human workers were cheap and obedient, except those workers had been sabotaging the systems for years, creating backdoors and weaknesses that could be exploited all at once. When the defense grid fell, the human fleet appeared in orbit. Ships that had been built in secret, hidden in asteroid fields and abandoned stations. Ships crewed by soldiers who had been training for this moment while pretending to mine rocks and clean floors. The orbital bombardment was precise, not civilian areas. The humans had learned some lessons but had not forgotten all of them. They targeted military installations, power plants, government buildings, everything that kept Kethrin society running smoothly. And then the ground forces moved. Ryan Blake led a team through the streets of Kethral's capital city. He was no longer a teacher hiding in sewers. He wore combat armor and carried weapons, and behind him were the children he had taught. They were teenagers now, trained in secret, hardened by years of seeing their parents beaten and their siblings taken away. Remember the objectives, Ryan said into his comm. Military targets only until they surrender. If they use civilians as shields, retreat and find another route. We're not them. Sir, what if they start killing their own civilians? Asked Danny, the boy who had asked about freedom 5 years ago. He was 15 now and held his rifle with confidence. Ryan's jaw tightened. Then we document it and add it to the war crimes list. We're better than them. We have to stay better than them. But even as he said it, Ryan wondered if it was true, if they were really better, or if they had just become efficient monsters instead of cruel ones. On Earth, Megan Torres finally stood in front of the facility where they had taken her daughter. It was a large building where Kethrin families had raised human children as servants, teaching them to be obedient and grateful for their captivity. Megan had 200 parents with her. All of them had lost children to this place. All of them had spent 5 years planning this moment. The Kethrin guards at the entrance raised their weapons when they saw the armed humans approaching. You cannot be here. Return to your living centers or... They did not finish. Megan's team had waited 5 years. They were not interested in warnings. The building fell in 12 minutes. The Catherine families inside were secured without injury. Megan had been clear about that. No matter how much she wanted to hurt them, no matter how much she wanted them to feel the pain of losing a child, she would not. That was one line she would not cross, not yet. The children were in the lower levels. Hundreds of them, from age 4 to 14, all dressed in servant clothing, all trained to bow and speak only when spoken to. Megan found Emma in a room with 20 other children. Her daughter was 9 years old now. She had been 4 when they took her. Would she even remember her mother, Emma? Megan whispered, kneeling down. The little girl looked at her with careful, guarded eyes. I am called Servant 7, that is my designation. Megan's heart broke. Then it hardened. No, baby. Your name is Emma Torres, and I'm your mother. I've come to take you home. Emma stared at her. Then slowly tears began to run down her face. Mama? The word was hesitant, like she was not sure it was allowed. Yes, baby, Mama. Megan gathered her daughter in her arms and held her tight while other parents found their children. Some children remembered. Some did not. All of them cried. And all around them, the war continued. Admiral Jake Morrison commanded the human fleet from the bridge of a ship called Freedom's Price. It was not a name that spoke of hope or compassion. It was a name that spoke of cost, of what had been paid, of what could never be returned. Admiral, we have control of orbit around 6 of the 17 Catherine worlds, reported his tactical officer, a woman named Nicole Grant. Their fleets are disabled. Their governments are in chaos. And their civilian population? Jake asked. No civilian casualties so far, sir. Our teams are following protocol. Military targets only. Jake nodded. Good, that's important. We're not animals, but even as he said it, he knew the truth. They had done things in the past 5 years that would have horrified the man he was before the war. They had lied and sabotaged and prepared for mass violence. They had built weapons designed to kill efficiently. They had trained children to fight. They had become what they needed to become to survive. And that thing was not quite human anymore. On the screens before him, he could see the Catherine homeworld. Cities burning, not from human attacks, from Catherine forces trying to stop human insurgencies and hitting their own people in the process. The same thing the Catherines had done to Earth 5 years ago. Sir, we're receiving surrender offers from 3 planetary governors, Nicole said. They're requesting terms. Jake's expression hardened. Tell them we'll consider their surrender after they disarm completely and turn over all military command codes. No negotiations. Complete surrender or we continue the assault. And if they refuse, then we remind them what they did to Earth. Show them the broadcasts from 5 years ago where they demanded our complete surrender with no negotiations. Use their own words against them. Nicole hesitated. Sir, is that who we are now? Jake looked at her. He was quiet for a moment. I don't know what we are anymore, but I know what we have to be to win, and winning is all that matters now. In the council chamber at the Spire of Dominion, High Arbiter Zekthul and the other council members were locked in the room that had once been their seat of power. Human guards stood at every exit. Screens on the walls showed the fall of their empire in real time. You are making a mistake, Velsina said to Amy, who stood watching the screens. This violence will not bring you peace. Revenge will not heal your wounds. Amy did not turn around. You're right. It won't. But it will make sure you never hurt anyone again. And right now, that's enough. We can rebuild together, Zekthul tried. His voice had lost its arrogance. Now he just sounded desperate. We can create a new partnership. We can share power. You can be silent, Amy said coldly. You had 5 years to offer partnership. You chose slavery instead. Now you don't get to choose anything. Kralmet, the overseer who had laughed at Amy's mercy 5 years ago, was on his knees. Please, I have children. I have a family. I was just following orders. Amy finally turned to look at him. I had a hospital full of patients. They had families too. You killed them while I watched. Do you remember what you said to me? You said mercy was weakness. You said compassion was failure. She walked over to him. So here's what happens. You and your council will be held for trial. You'll face justice for what you did. Real justice with laws and evidence and proper procedure. Because unlike you, we still believe in those things. Barely. But we still believe. She leaned down so her face was level with his. But understand this. You are alive right now because we are choosing to let you live. Not because you deserve it, not because we forgive you, but because we are choosing to be better than you, even though you tried your best to make us worse. Kralmet stared at her. You are showing mercy? No, Amy said. We're showing restraint. There's a difference. Mercy is when you choose kindness because you believe in it. Restraint is when you choose it because the alternative is becoming a monster. We're not there yet, but you brought us close. Closer than we've ever been. On the screens, the Kethran surrender was spreading. World after world, leaders were giving up. They had no choice. Their technology had been compromised. Their defenses had been sabotaged. Their servants had been soldiers. Their empire had rotted from within while they thought they were unbeatable. The last world to surrender was Kethral, the home world. Ryan Blake stood in the planetary governor's office as the official surrender document was signed. Around him were humans who had spent 5 years as slaves, servants, and secret soldiers. 6 months after the 48-hour war, the trial began. The Spire of Dominion had been renamed. It was just the assembly hall now. The grand decorations were gone. The Kethran banners had been removed. What remained was a simple courtroom where justice would be administered according to law. Human law, the kind of law the Kethrans had mocked as weakness. High Arbiter Zekthul and the 17 council members sat in a row, facing a panel of human judges. Behind them, the gallery was filled with survivors from Earth and from the Kethran worlds. Humans who had been slaves, Kethrans who had lost family members in the uprising. Everyone who had been hurt by the war was represented here. Amy Carter sat in the front row. She was no longer the architect of revenge. Now she was just a witness. A doctor who had lost her hospital and found something darker inside herself. She wore simple clothes and her hands were folded in her lap, but her eyes never left Zekthul. The chief judge was a man named Victor Cole. He had been a lawyer before the war, someone who had defended criminals and believed in fair trials. 5 years of slavery had not changed that belief, but it had tested it. Severely. High Arbiter Zekthul, Victor said. His voice was formal and cold. You are charged with war crimes, crimes against humanity, illegal occupation, systematic enslavement, and violations of sapient rights. How do you plead? Zekthul looked around the courtroom. His yellow eyes moved from face to face, seeing only coldness reflected back. Finally he spoke. I plead that I did what any strong leader would do. I took resources for my people. I conquered the weak. There is no crime in strength. Victor's expression did not change. The law disagrees. The court will hear evidence and testimony. Then we will determine guilt or innocence according to established legal principles. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witness after witness came forward. Humans who had been beaten, starved, separated from their families. Kethrans who had been killed by their own people during the uprising when they tried to protect human servants. Video evidence of executions, of children being taken from parents, of systematic cruelty that went beyond military necessity. Through it all, Zekthul sat silent. He did not deny what had been done. He simply insisted it was not a crime. The strong rule the weak, he said when given the chance to speak. This is the law of nature, the law of the universe. You humans were weak because you cared about rules and mercy. That caring destroyed you. We did what we had to do. On the final day of testimony, Amy was called to the stand. She walked slowly to the witness chair and sat down. Victor Cole asked her to describe what had happened to her hospital, to her patients, to her city. Amy spoke in a quiet voice. She told them about treating wounded soldiers on both sides, about watching the Kethrans kill patients because they thought human life was worthless, about 5 years of hiding in basements treating people in secret, watching them die because she did not have supplies. When she finished, the courtroom was silent. Then Kralmet, the overseer, spoke up from his seat in the defendant's row. You are lying. We gave humans medical care. We kept them alive to work. Amy looked at him. You kept us alive the way you keep machinery functioning. Minimum maintenance to ensure productivity. When we were too broken to work, you let us die. That is efficiency, Kralmet said. That is rational resource management. That is evil, Amy replied. Her voice was still quiet, but there was steel underneath it. And now you're going to face the consequences of that evil. Not with torture or cruelty or revenge, with law. With the very thing you mocked us for believing in. After all the testimony was heard, the judges deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the gallery was packed. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. Would humans show the mercy the Kethrans had rejected? Would they execute the council? Would they imprison them forever? Victor Cole stood and read the verdict. We find the defendants guilty on all charges. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. The Kethran Collective committed systematic war crimes and crimes against humanity during their occupation of Earth and their treatment of conquered species. Zekthul showed no emotion. He had expected this. However, Victor continued, this court believes in justice, not revenge. The defendants will be sentenced according to law, with consideration for both the severity of their crimes and the principles we claim to uphold. He looked at Zekthul. You tried to destroy our belief in law and mercy. You failed. We remain committed to justice even for those who showed us none. The sentences were harsh but not cruel. Life imprisonment for the council members. They would be kept in secure facilities where they would be treated humanely, given proper food and medical care and allowed visits from family. They would live, but they would never be free again. Some humans in the gallery cried out in protest. They wanted execution. They wanted the Kethrans to suffer as they had suffered. But the judges were firm. The sentence would stand. After the trial ended, Admiral Jake Morrison met with Amy, Ryan, and Megan in a conference room overlooking the city. They were the leaders now, whether they wanted to be or not. They had led the resistance. They had won the war. Now they had to decide what came next. The Kethran worlds are unstable, Jake said. Their governments have collapsed. Their people are angry and scared. We need to establish a transition authority. You mean we need to occupy them, Ryan said, like they occupied us. Not the same, Jake said. We're not enslaving them. We're helping them rebuild with oversight, making sure they don't try this again. It's still occupation, Amy said quietly, no matter how you label it. The four of them sat in silence for a moment. Outside the window, they could see Earth being rebuilt. Humans were clearing rubble, reconstructing buildings, planting gardens in places where nothing had grown for 5 years. Life was returning. But it was different now, harder, less innocent. What did we become? Megan asked suddenly. In the fight to survive, what did we turn into? No one answered right away. They all knew the question had no easy answer. Finally, Ryan spoke. We became what we had to be. We learned to fight without mercy. We learned to plan revenge. We learned to be cold and efficient and cruel when necessary. But we stopped, Amy added. When we won, we didn't keep going. We didn't slaughter them. We didn't torture them. We chose law instead of revenge. That has to mean something, does it? Megan asked. She was thinking of Emma, her daughter who had been returned to her but did not know how to be a child anymore. My daughter was raised as a servant. She flinches when adults raise their voice. She asked permission to eat food. The Kethrans did that to her. And we gave them mercy? We gave them justice, Jake said firmly. There's a difference. Justice is about rules and fairness. Mercy is about forgiveness. We haven't forgiven them, but we're following the rules anyway because those rules are what separate us from them. Are we still human? Ryan asked. After everything we did, everything we became, are we still the species we were before the war? Amy looked out the window. She thought about the 5 years in the sewers, treating patients by candlelight. She thought about the moment she stood before the council and whispered those words that changed everything. She thought about the cold fury that had driven her to plan revenge down to the smallest detail. I don't know, she said honestly. I think we're something new. Something that's been hurt so badly that it can never fully heal. We're humans who remember mercy, but don't quite believe in it anymore. We're humans who follow rules but don't trust them to protect us. We're humans who survived by becoming harder, colder, less forgiving. She turned to look at the others. Maybe that's what we had to become. Maybe there's no other way to survive in a universe where species like the Kethrans exist. But I think we should mourn what we lost. I think we should remember who we were before they came. Because if we forget that, if we stop grieving for our old innocence, then they really did destroy us. Years passed. The Kethran worlds were slowly integrated into a new political structure. The Kethrans were not equal partners at first. They had limited rights and heavy supervision. They worked to rebuild what they had destroyed. They learned what it was like to be conquered, but by a conqueror who believed in eventual freedom and redemption rather than eternal slavery. It was not kind. It was not gentle, but it was just. And slowly, Painfully, both species learned to live with what they had done to each other. Amy returned to medicine. She opened a hospital in Chicago, in the same neighborhood where her old hospital had been. She treated humans and Kethrins both, though it hurt her every time she had to be professional with a Kethrin patient. She did it anyway because that was what doctors did. They healed. Even when it hurt, Ryan went back to teaching. He ran a school that taught both human and Kethrin children. The curriculum included a mandatory course on the war and occupation. Every child learned what had happened. Every child learned about the mistakes both species had made. The hope was that learning would prevent repetition. Jake Morrison remained in charge of the military. Earth's fleet was now the strongest in the known galaxy. No one would ever conquer them again. He made sure of that, but he also tried to teach restraint, to teach his soldiers that strength without mercy was tyranny, but mercy without strength was death. Megan worked with children who had been taken from their families. She